Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week featured Arsenal's home finale against Newcastle, our arch nemesis of this season. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. I'm not sure arch nemesis is the right word. I feel like a little more boogeyman. Because to be a nemesis, we have to actually feel things for them beyond just kind of contempt. Like they're not Spurs. Come on.
No. But for this season, you're right. They're the ones who we couldn't beat, even though it felt like we should be able to. And there's 3 defeats, by far the most of the season. We didn't in a season where we had very few defeats overall. They beat us 3 times. So
that
was noteworthy.
Yeah. But it was the first time we scored a goal against them this season, actually, which was
wow, I didn't even realize that.
I mean, because it was 1-0 was the game at St. James's Park, and then both legs of the Carabao Cup were 2-0. So,
yeah, there it is.
But not today.
Speaking of cup competitions, the FA Cup final was this weekend, right?
Yeah, this is so weird. Some years they do it this way. I know it's because the calendar has to work things out, but the FA Cup final day was before the end of the Premier League season, which happens every couple of years. But that was on Saturday at Wembley, Crystal Palace and Manchester City. 1-0 to Palace. First time in club history, Crystal Palace has come away with a trophy. So congrats to them, and my chuckles towards Manchester City. I'll explain the kit in a moment, but yeah. So I have to say, we are facing the possibility of a season where not only does Arsenal not win a trophy, which is, as we talked about, annoying. We can kind of get over it in instances, but it's still frustrating. While potentially Liverpool wins the title. Newcastle won the Carabao Cup. We could have seen City win that. One of Spurs or United is going to win the Europa League. And Chelsea is going to be heavily favored to win the Conference League. So that's a lot of trophies being passed out to a lot of teams that we openly dislike. And, we're not going to be one of them. So so I'm very glad in that sense to have seen City go down in Wembley yesterday.
Oh, right.
Even though I didn't actually watch any of it.
Yeah, we're not winning any of those trophies, but City isn't either.
Yeah.
Yep.
And especially would have been kind of annoying given how bad they've been this season. And again, we say bad partly by their lofty standards. They're still very likely to finish in 3rd at this point.
Mm. Yeah, it's not something you would have predicted at the outset.
No, actually we didn't. We'll talk about that next week, but no, we didn't.
Right. So would you care to explain the kit that you're wearing today, your lovely blue NYCFC jersey?
Yeah, just remember, everyone, North London is red, but New York is blue. That's right. New York City beat Red Bulls 2-0 yesterday. That was good to see. New York is blue. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So they can, Red Bulls can stick it somewhere, and New York City, it's still ours. City's still ours. Go back to Jersey, and so that's my MLS update. That was fun. That was my fun Saturday. I'd honestly, as I talked about the calendar, I'd actually forgotten altogether the FA Cup final was yesterday, and I opened up ESPN and Palace upset City. Really? Well, that's so much fun. And then later, I did actually watch New York City beat Red Bulls. Just want to keep saying it again. They did that. They did that yesterday. So yesterday was a decent day, a good day for soccer, and so was today, as it turns out.
Yeah, as it turns out, we got that victory and that goal that we'd been seeking against Newcastle. So 1-0 at home against them. We got to see our 25-26 home kit, as the tradition has been. I don't know, how long have they been doing that on the last home match of a season?
It's been a couple of years at least. They remember last year they had the whole thing where I guess we couldn't because we wore that season's, but I think because the title was on the line, I think they said something to that effect.
Okay. I didn't remember. Okay.
I remember us not doing it but that was kind of the weird thing. Aren't we supposed to wear the next year's one? But it's been a couple of years they've done that. So, I don't love it. It's weird to me, but But we won today, so I don't really care. I don't know. What did you we talked a little bit about it a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
What did you think watching it in action?
Yeah, I mean, so this is the kind of thing where you, with a much lengthier history going into it, have very different opinions, more strongly held opinions than I do at this point. I mean, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years on, I may get there too. But for now, I like it. I think it's cool. It's similar to like kind of this year's and the year before's kind of put together a little bit. The one thing that I liked least from the leak was the line on the shorts that kind of cuts off the 3 Adidas stripes on the side. So seeing that in person, I really wanted to see that worn by them. It bothers me a little bit less because of seeing how far down on the leg it goes, and it goes all the way across at the bottom on the backside. So that didn't bother me as much. But it's I am about to order one for my son because he's growing out of his from this season anyway. So it's as good a reason as any to get him updated. It was weird. I get the stuff from Kitbag is the best place I've found in the US to get official Arsenal stuff. And for some reason it's like broken. I couldn't get the shorts customized. So I need to wait on it because he has to get Saka,
Yeah. Right.
Well, so I need for them to iron that out.
Good choice. I mean, probably because it just came out. So I'm sure they're, since it's just been dropped, like everything's going to be swarmed with orders. So.
Yeah, and the adult shorts are fine. You can customize them. The kids you can. But I'm waiting for myself because there's a couple potential players that I'm considering getting, and I do always customize it with the player name and number on the back and just the jersey, not the shorts.
Yeah.
But there's a couple who I'm considering who are likely to receive new numbers next season, so I don't want to get them yet.
Well, I did actually see they did announce some new squad numbers. Raya is going to switch to number 1.
Right, I'd seen that, yeah.
And because he was giving up 22, Wanyeri was going to take 22.
Right, I'd read that, which was especially funny today because did you notice that the Newcastle keeper was also number 22?
I did not notice that, but there you go then.
It was kind of funny because you just always expect it to be 1, and when it's not, it's what of a chance of it being the same number? I guess it's like 1 in 99, roughly.
Yeah, well, I guess like 22 would put him like at the back end of the roster if you think about it, because I mean, there's supposedly 23 names on a roster, so he would be 22. Kind of makes sense as a keeper, as a backup keeper's kind of number. Well, right, and I think this season, so I think Raya has some history with that number. There's some personal reason that he has liked that number in the past, but if he was seeking number 1, I think the reason it didn't work out that way for this season was because if you recall, Ramsdale was still on the roster at the very beginning, so Ramsdale still had that number. It wasn't vacated until too late for Raya to take it this season. So yeah, exactly. So he's going to be number 1, which is funny because there's a lot of rumors floating around about Joan Garcia coming in as the keeper. So we'll see.
Really?
But
to replace him?
I mean, we kind of know it's a thing that's been going on. We'll try. I guess we'll save some transfer stuff more for next week. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of smoke with that in the not too distant past about him being, them wanting Garcia out of Espanyol. So who knows? I mean, it was interesting. I was with some people and we were talking a little bit about it, and some of the folks who were a little more plugged in than I am on a more regular basis. He was pretty confident that Garcia was going to happen. Now, I say he's plugged in. He just tracks it more closely than I do. He doesn't know people. But still,
right.
Garcia sounds like a likely thing. So it could be interesting. It could be a case where, it could be a case where Raya, now there's real competition for that. Or alternately, it could be a case where, kind of like Ramsdale, like, oh, sure, we'll switch keepers.
Right.
Sure, we'll rotate. So I don't know. So, but Raya taking the 1 obviously is an interesting sign, and then Wanyeri down to the 22. I did see Lewis Skelly. It wasn't officially announced, but I think it is most likely he is sticking with 49. So that'll be
okay, because that was definitely one on my list that I was considering getting. So yeah, it's good to know.
I mean, I guess I'd say he's established himself as a player in that number in a way that Wanyeri hasn't in 53. And part of that's injury related. But it's not unusual. You'll see that a lot. with younger players, we talked about number changes, but I see it a lot sometimes in other sports too. A guy gets, in the U.S. with a minor league system, guy gets called up. He ends up with some high number in the 60s or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year, as he's a regular player and some other guys have gone out, then he gets a real number, something that looks a little more like, something that looks a little bit more like a number than a player of that, a regular
Stature,
player would wear. Yeah, stuff regular player would wear.
Right.
Although I have to say, I don't know. Having watched them play, honestly, I mean, I like them, but I have to say I'd kind of forgotten they were doing it, and if I hadn't thought about it, then I'm not sure I would have noticed that they were necessarily the new kids.
Right. I mean, I pointed out, my son watched the whole match with me just about, and I pointed out that they were the new kits, and I asked what he thought, and he said, no, they're not. And remember, like, he has the full kit of the season. He wears it. Like, he definitely knows what this season's kit looks like, and he thought it was the same.
I mean, I say that not thinking about it, but as I watch it, I'm glad that we don't have I don't like the blue accents. I thought it was a little too much blue on this year's kit. So, So, I think it'll be good, and then we'll kind of wait over the summer. They'll release the away kit, or the change kit, the second, which seems to be most likely is going to be blue, and then the strong rumors of the white for the third. But that'll probably be that may be early in the first couple of weeks of the season by the time we see that. So don't be surprised. I suspect the away kit will probably be closer to when they go on the summer. It seems the last years they've done it when they come to the U.S. in the summer.
Oh, okay.
And they'll probably wear it at some point during that while they're.
I specifically remember the European, like, dark blue, dark green kit from a couple of years ago. I remember that came out during our county fair that we usually go to every year because it's held a few minutes from our house. I remember ordering that there, and that's always like late August.
Yeah. So, it's usually, I recall it's usually after the season starts, but before like the Champions League, the European competitions kick off. For Arsenal, obviously the preliminaries, the qualifying rounds start like way back in July. I mean, they're so get ready, champions of Malta.
Well, bringing things more back to the day's events. I noticed. So, who was the official? I can picture him. I can't think of his name right now.
I forgot who it was. That's usually a good sign, though, if I don't remember the referee's name.
It wasn't Michael Oliver. It was the other prominent one who you recognize and you see a lot. I can't think of his name.
According to ESPN, it was Simon Hooper.
Simon Hooper. That sounds right. Yeah, I guess Michael Oliver, Anthony Taylor, and I think those are the three who I kind of think of as the main ones, but.
There's not a name that sticks out to me, but that's, again, usually a good thing.
Yeah. Well, so he did make himself relatively little heard from this match. Did you notice that?
In more ways than one, yeah. It was very much the old let him play, which, we've talked about this before, right? That gets frustrating about that kind of let them play ethos is it usually seems to be the case that they'll be allowed to play, especially through the first half, and then at some point in the second half, the referee just starts carding everything. And there's that kind of like, well, wait, I thought you established this wasn't a foul, and except it is, and all of that. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised that didn't happen. Which is interesting because we talk about it, how Newcastle is generally regarded as a more physical side. And I say they're regarded that way because, well, they are. But I do think it's a good sign for us that, I think we're not, there are times, even as recently as maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to say nothing of the number of years before that, where that kind of physicality would have been a real problem for us. And I always thought it was a little overblown about Arsenal being soft, but there was definitely a case we were a smaller team, and it was a little bit easier to be physically pushed around, especially by a Newcastle who's always had a rough edge, which is, I think, partly reflective on where they are. I mean, that's just being in Newcastle's not is a rough town. They've got a good, loyal, loud, but also a bit more blue collar fan base in American terms. Yeah, I do think that's a style that in some ways is meant to suit them, but I thought we handled quite well.
Yeah, if I'm remembering right, Newcastle's where the Geordie accent comes from, right?
Geordies are the people in that part of Newcastle.
Right.
In Newcastle, that part of England.
I guess. Yeah. Okay. So it does refer to a population, not just of an accent. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's what
I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that all tracks. But yeah, it was interesting. I guess that style of officiation would tend to favor the rougher side, I guess. But
yeah,
it didn't feel that way so much in this match.
No, but I think that's also. I mean, what gets frustrating sometimes about playing Newcastle. Again, this is a feeling. It's probably a little overblown, but the feeling, the thing that frustrates is that if it does feel a little bit like they're allowed to do that to you, but if you do that to them, well, I mean, it's a foul. I got to call it, and some of that too. I mean, you see that they can go down pretty easy. Like Newcastle isn't afraid to flop here and there, which does tend to get, it seems to get rewarded with calls. And to the referee's credit, I think, I mean, he decided he wasn't going to call that.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't call, and he didn't. I mean, that was basically the end of it. He wasn't going to call a lot of stuff. And,
as evidenced by the first half ending with the whistle blown at 45 minutes and like 3 seconds or something, there was 0 stoppage time.
Yeah, which again, stoppage time is just made up. There's no rhyme or reason to how any of that comes in. And it's not at all reflective of what actually happens in the game, but whatever. It's fine. I mean, let's be honest. The first half performance wasn't anything to write home about, was it?
Well, no, it was. I mean, yes and no. From an offensive point of view for Arsenal, no, not really. We had some really brilliant defensive moments. I mean, you had Raya with that double save, the chaos in the box with the ball was bouncing around. He got a hand to block it once. It landed at his feet, got knocked around. Then he kind of kicked out his foot and got it with his leg a little bit. A couple seconds after it was that was noteworthy.
Kick save and a beauty he had there. That's always fun to see.
But other than that, no, not much.
It is an interesting thing to sort of watch. Performance was, and I do think it followed on a lot with some of what we saw in the first half of the Liverpool game last week. I thought we were sloppy. We had some bad giveaways. I mean, Newcastle plays stylistically very differently, so I don't think they're as able to sort of punish us in the way that Liverpool obviously could and did. And so I think we were a little fortunate there. But I mean, they had a couple of times. We forced their keeper into a couple awkward saves or a couple of strange bounces in the box. I mean, they don't crowd the box, but they definitely get a lot of guys back. And we had a few opportunities that found defenders instead of finding the targets. So, but I do think it was a case. It was definitely a case. It reminded me a lot of the previous week. In that first half was kind of mediocre, and in the second half we sort of found another gear. And I think that was really how it played out, was being able to get that second gear in the second half.
Yeah, they came out swinging again. After 10 minutes or so, we ended up with the ball in the back of the net. Declan Rice had a beauty of a shot, and contributions immediately before from Saka and Odegaard in the build-up, and just a long-range shot, from a not dissimilar position where he scored those free kicks in the Champions League. Just kind of that long-range, just perfectly placed shot to get past everyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the way we're lining up and sort of out of necessity, obviously we didn't have Marino today because of the suspension. So the front line, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, and I thought Trossard was good today, and I think he and Martinelli seem to be switching out on that wing a little bit. There are a lot of times we did that thing where we're coming in towards trying to get into the touchline and kind of cut the ball in, but we don't really have somebody in those positions, or you're relying on Trossard to kind of wrestle his way through some of the central defenders, which is just not really a fruitful strategy. And so I think this game, we needed to be, I don't want to say more willing, because I saw a few times guys were looking up, and sometimes they were blocked. They were looking up like, as you run across the top of the box, like, here it goes, I'm ready to turn, I'm gonna shoot, and the ball. This was a nice set of passes. Good to see Odegaard who was better in the second half against Liverpool as well. Good to see him having some good moments. He gets it to Rice, who hits it first time. Not quite as sweetly done as the Real Madrid kicks were, but I don't think you're going to see any. It may be a while before you see anything. The two kicks like that in a game.
Well, it's also very different when you're scoring from open play instead of a stationary ball. But it's a set piece, it makes a big difference on it. But yeah, I mean, also with what you're talking about, like having difficulty getting down the wings, I think part of what I saw too was like, because we didn't have Marino or Havertz, the guys who kind of pushed through the middle, there were multiple times where we had these crosses that were decent crosses, but there's just no one there to tap them in. They just went all the way across and made it to be from one wing to the other, untouched. So,
I think. And there were a couple of those, too, that you kind of waited for. You were kind of hoping someone could have made a run. It was a little off them. But there were a couple times. And we never had any that floated in, like, completely untouched. Like there was someone supposed to be there, but there wasn't. But definitely, we can create some danger there. And we created some danger on some corners as well. But that one was... I think a shot from outside the box was more likely where we were going to have luck today, and as it turns out, that's how it played out.
Right. Yeah. So that goal occurred into the second half. At the beginning of the second half, we had one case of a few interesting substitutions that were noteworthy in this match. So we had Calafiore come on at the half for Saliba, which I was a little concerned about. Do we know what happened there at all?
I have heard nothing. Obviously, Saliba comes off and that without explanation at halftime, and that's terrifying. I really don't know. We all saw Calafiore warming up and coming on, and we kind of figured it must be like Lewis Skelly, left back. And nope, then it's Saliba, and it's like, no, oh no. Yeah, and it was interesting because Calafiore was a center back, which he does play center back. He did play in Italy. I think he has played center back for Italy as well. And then you see him bombing up the left-hand side or making runs into the box, which is not really what you want your center back to be doing. But you know what? He could do that in part because, I think Jakub Kiwior had himself a really solid game today.
He did, and that was something I was going to talk about. Kiwior had some really key moments. I think though with Calafiore, did he get away with something though a little bit? Because Newcastle didn't really threaten much in the second half, right?
No,
he wasn't necessarily called on too much to act in a traditional center back role where he's kind of the back line, like the last line of defense before the keeper. So maybe it was okay having him play centrally and it worked out this time, but maybe we wouldn't want to see that again necessarily.
Yeah, he's playing center back because we needed a center back. That's sure. Really, and we're frankly out of them at this point. We don't have any more. I guess was Timber on the bench today? Now I'm trying to remind myself if he was on the bench.
Didn't remember seeing him, but yeah. So obviously part of it is because it's the end of the season and we're a little light on that. But I think also I do think we did. This was a comment people made in the aftermath of. By the way, Timber was not on the bench today. That was a comment people made in the aftermath of the Liverpool game. As we started to switch a little bit more of guys rotating positions, because that's always been the criticism under Arteta, that we've been a little static and guys staying in their lanes or staying in their positions. And now, I think partly out of necessity, I think with some of the versatility we're dealing with, you're seeing a little bit more of that switching of positions. And I think there's a little bit of that too with Calafiore pushing forward, but also that's because he's definitely more offensive minded as a defensive player goes. And right. I wish I could take credit for the line, taller, more handsome Zinchenko, but there's a lot of similarities in their games, minus the age, of course. Calafiore is younger, and so there's a chance he grows a little more defensively responsible, and Zinchenko is who he is. But yes, of course, the fear, of course, I guess we'll wait and hear if there's anything to do with Saliba. And frankly, at this point, though, since we talked about this with Champions League wrapped up, you know what? If he doesn't need to play on Sunday, Yeah, I mean, for the closing match against Southampton, we should be okay without him. But yeah, hopefully, because we are at the end, hopefully whatever the issue may be is worked out by the time we come back toward the end of the summer. Yeah. So Calafiore was not the last interesting sub we had this match. We also had Kai Havertz return for Saka in the 76th minute, so getting a little close to the end.
Yeah, welcome back, Kai Havertz. I guess I've been hearing, we heard a couple of weeks ago, right? The talk was he could return before the end of the season. And the sense was always Champions League final. Obviously, with that being off the table, I guess they want, like we saw with Timber last year, if the guys are ready to play, it's not like we don't need them. It's not like we couldn't use the bodies. And so Kai Havertz came on and, I'd say he did Kai Havertz things. He was moving around. He got in some positions, had some weird giveaways too. Got into a little bumps with a few players, as he does from now and again. I don't know what I expected from him coming up, but it was nice to see him back. And it wouldn't surprise me, frankly, given he played. I wouldn't surprise me if he's leading the line on Sunday.
Sure, yeah. And it might be interesting if we see Marino and Havertz together. That might be something that could work in interesting, unpredictable ways. Not that you necessarily need it against Southampton this season, but, try it out maybe.
Well, you wouldn't do it with Marino. Marino is playing center forward out of an emergency. I think Kai Havertz is starting up there because that's where Kai Havertz plays in Arteta's system. The only thing I could think of is if you start to use a Marino as a stand-in for the kind of striker they're targeting for the summer. But you're not really going to gain anything from this game because you're probably going to have a more rotated lineup. Some guys are going to be resting. We don't know about Saliba. So I feel like, chances are whoever this new guy is, he's probably going to show up and hopefully shows up to do the summer tour. And so at that point, just do it in training camp. Like running a system with a stand, Marino as the stand-in big man striker sort of feels like I don't know who benefits from that. Marino would probably be better suited trying to spend more time in the midfield and actually play that position. As happy as we are, and as we can tip our cap to him deputizing as the center forward, that's not really where we want him to be playing.
Yeah, no, I see that. So then a little bit later, we did get our last couple subs of the match, which I don't remember seeing this type of sub before, where we had Tierney come on and Jorginho come on. The commentators were indicating this is probably just to kind of get them out. This would be their last home game in the Arsenal shirt, basically. Is that something that you see typically done when a player is leaving the club?
It's not unusual. It's interesting in their case because both of them are bench players.
Sure.
And so, but you could argue like Trossard was hurt, and so his substitution was partially injury related, but also Tierney is a more defensively responsible player, especially on the left side, where we said Calafiore just kind of running into the opposition box. So Tierney's going to be a little more defensive minded there. He's going to help lock down a 1-0 lead. Same with Jorginho in for Odegaard. They're able to serve that purpose, and so it's not entirely strange that they would come in those circumstances. That being said, typically you see it the other way, where you'll see, and Saka in particular got a little bit of that today, that he got subbed off, so that I think partly he was getting subbed off in part so that he could get a nice round of applause, nice ovation as his season was coming to an end. If you think about the other guys who came off, the four of them came off. Obviously, Saliba was at halftime. Obviously, he didn't want to come off. And then the other one, Trossard's a bit of an injury. And then Odegaard, we love Martin Odegaard, and he's a good captain and all that, but he has not had a season. I think Odegaard wants the season to be over. I think he definitely kind of is like, all right, yeah. Let's hit the summer. Let's relax. Let's get refit, and let's start talking about next year.
Right. Yeah, I had totally missed that Trossard was injured. That I didn't notice that, so thanks for pointing that out. Tierney, though, referring to him as a bench player is kind of funny because that is certainly what he has become. But I remember just a couple seasons ago that he was a starter for us before we got, Timber and Lewis Skelly and these other players who have now filled out our defensive line, that he was a starting defensive player. Was he on? I guess he was on the left back because Ben White was always the right back. So he would have been.
Yeah, he was so he was the left back. But he kept getting hurt was the real problem, and so just we couldn't rely on him. And even then, we sent him on loan to Sociedad. And he got hurt there, and so he didn't get, he got hurt with Scotland. I mean, you feel for the guy. He's got the talent, he's got the capabilities, but he just, always seems to pick up those injuries. So he is signed his pre-contract with Celtic, so he'll be going back to Scotland. I mean, he'll be in the Champions League next year, so I'm sure he'll be able to strut his performance there. I mean, we could get drawn against them. Who knows?
Sure.
And so I'm curious to see, I am of course curious to see how that plays out, but also I'm, farewell Kieran Tierney, good servant to the club. It was nice to see him get a run out. I'd say with Jorginho, I just kind of, he'll be headed to, we know that he's got his contract in Brazil. We will not see him next year in the Champions League.
Right.
But he good to see him.
And we might see him in World Cup or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he's still playing for Italy in next summer. Who knows? But good. Nice to see them both. A nice hand for both of them when they came on. It'll be interesting to see who else ends up leaving the club. But we know both of them are on their way out. So
yeah. One last notable event. Well, kind of two. So we had. In stoppage time, before stoppage time, about 10 minutes before that, the ball had gotten kicked over the touchline. It went toward Arteta, and like he often does, he went to kick it back to the player who was going to do the throw-in, keep things moving. He helps out that way. I think the kick didn't go where he wanted it to, though. It ended up noticeably infield, and he got shown the yellow card.
Yeah.
Not a great look.
No, I mean, I sort of get it. And it's one of those things that he does it, half a dozen times and it gets it right to the other guy and nothing happens. But he does it this time in this place and he's got a yellow, which is just it's a silly yellow in large part because he will now be suspended for the Southampton game. So,
yeah.
Who is our backup man? Who does, I guess it's Stuvenberg, I guess we'll do it. I don't know.
That's who I would guess. Yeah.
I guess he'll officially be the manager on next week.
You have to imagine that Arteta's on an earpiece with whoever is out there instead of him.
There are some, right? We've talked about this. There are some rules about their communication.
Okay.
There are because he is suspended. Obviously a manager's job is very different than a player. When a player is suspended, it's really easy. He has to just sit in the stands and he can't play. The manager's a little different, and I do think a suspension is connected to when you're suspended. There are some other restrictions on you. I don't know. I don't know all the rules surrounding that, but it's not as if he can just be up there on a walkie-talkie up in a not a luxury box. It's going to be at Southampton, but somewhere in a suite and just calling instructions in. It's not.
Could it be possible that there's a difference between a straight red or second yellow suspension versus a yellow card accumulation? Because they were talking about it as a touchline ban is what they were calling it, which sounds to me more like he just can't physically be on the sidelines, not that he couldn't have any involvement at all. Is there possibly two levels of suspension for managers?
Well, remember first and foremost that the laws of the game were originally written in an age before the telephone existed.
Right.
So I mean, in a sense, to be, a touchline ban, not being allowed to be on the sidelines is kind of cutting you off from the team altogether. Obviously, these days, for technological reasons, that doesn't have to be the case. And I'm sure there are stories. I'm sure people who know the history of the league better. Have stories of managers using a runner. Some kid runs up to the stands here. Take this note down to the assistant, and we know with red cards they're supposed to go into the locker room. But if you watch baseball, managers who get kicked out. I mean, they're standing they can watch the TV in the clubhouse, and they're shouting orders or sending people are, going to the bathroom, to get like there are ways of getting that information. And it's kind of one of those open secrets that everyone kind of knows, and no one says anything, because if you get in trouble, then I'm getting in trouble too.
And we all want to be able to do this when it happens to us. Yeah.
I do recall there was an instance, I think it was in the Amazon season, Arteta got a touchline ban and stayed home. He didn't even travel with the team.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I wonder if that would be a little different this time, because it's the last game of the season, and he may want to be, games after the game. He may be up in a suite somewhere watching, and then when the game's over, go down to the dressing room and get his comments in as the season ends.
Yeah.
I don't know. That is one of those interesting things. We talk about the season ending. Like, in some ways, it reminds me a little bit of American sports when your team misses the playoffs and the season just kind of ends. Like, the last game ends, and a couple of days later, the NFL, they call it baggy day. Everyone's got a big garbage bag, and they throw all their junk into it, and then they go home, and then they'll come back in training camp later in the year when they'll actually to start the new season. But I don't know. I don't quite know the process or what it's like when the season ends for those guys.
The last noteworthy thing that happened was in the 8th minute of a minimum 5 minutes of stoppage time, where there was a corner kick under slightly contentious circumstances. Newcastle took the corner kick, and I'm not sure what the heck happened after that. All of a sudden, people were at each other's throats. It seemed like Raya may have been the center of it. Like, he got knocked over, and then something ensued. Do you have any visibility on what happened there?
Not really. I honestly, I didn't see anything post game about it, other than it was a little pushing and shoving. I think a lot of it involved Dan Burn, who was kind of at the center of it. Big hulking fellow. I mean, you saw a lot of times on those set pieces, Newcastle would position him right in the box. It's sort of the way we use the Ben White role, but he's not quite as cheeky and fun as Ben White is. He's just kind of big and physical. And I think I do recall there being. I want to be very careful about how I say this, because I only saw it live as it was happening. I haven't seen any replays. I don't really know quite what was going on. But I think he gave a little, he gave a little bump to Raya after the fact, and there was some pushing and shoving as a result of that. I mean, it's more than you typically see. And from the again, ESPN's report post game said that there were 2 yellows given out, one to Burn and then one to Calafiore. That's all I saw. It came out after it. Excuse me, but where's the? I'm just trying to pull up the information. There it is. Yeah, that's what I saw as far as the cards given out. But otherwise, yeah, it was kind of interesting. I suspect some of it was a little bit of Newcastle being a little frustrated at the fact they were losing.
Sure.
And basically that the physical play they had wasn't garnering the kind of reaction that they wanted or expected. And again, Arsenal teams of the not too distant past have folded under that kind of pressure. And we've talked about this. This is a big team, and this is a team that's not necessarily afraid to mix up. Calafiore was right in the middle of it. Lewis Skelly is not afraid of this sort of stuff at all. You got Tierney, who's not a player to be messed with. Declan Rice is a big boy. The only player we were really missing, assuming they actually threw down, the only player we're really missing in that would have been Gabriel, because Big Gabby is not going to have any of that. That is not a man you want to mess around with. But yeah, again, we're not a team that you're going to push around, and that's what it's been frustrating. But Newcastle hasn't out-physicaled us in those games. Tactically, they've given us some difficulties, and we've had a few, unfortunate plays. And then also, Alexander Isak who was a late scratch from the lineup today. He was not on the bench at all for them. Said they got an injury from training, and I think we benefited a little bit from him not being in the game. But overall, I thought we kind of handled them pretty well.
Yeah. So, who was your player of the week?
Player of the week, our man of the match. I'm actually going to say David Raya. I thought Raya was a good one, made it in a couple of good saves, kept it in it. Again, kind of being physical around. A couple of players, we talked about Calafiore, I thought had a really nice game. I think Lewis Skelly very quietly had a nice game. Declan Rice with the goal. I think with everybody in this game, I think you judged a little bit more on the second half, except in the case of Raya with the first half, because they all in the first half had a few misplaced passes or a few bad breakdowns and all of that. But I think Raya kept them in the game when it could have gone the other way, which is something we just haven't really been able to say, especially the last few weeks. And then in this one, I think he was able to make some saves early on. And then when push came to shove, we got the goal, and then that was it. So I'm gonna shout out to David Raya for this week.
Yeah, fully agreed. There's a reason I'm wearing my Raya shirt today. And in that same vein, I would definitely give as my second choice. I'll choose Kivior for mine this week, because it was really those early defensive moves that allowed us to stay in it to the point where Declan Rice's one goal in the second half was enough to win it because of the position that the defense allowed him to be in for that. So, there were some key moments. I mean, there was one really nice move by Kivior. The ball was bouncing and it was about to bounce over the byline, and he knocked it mid-air to turn that into a throw-in instead of a corner kick, which, it's nice. It was not necessary probably, but it was a nice move that I haven't seen done before. You see him a lot of times slide to get it off the ground, to keep it from going over, but I've never seen someone stop it mid-air from going over the byline like that. So that impressed me. But yeah, Raya, great choice. Like we talked about, the double save earlier was amazing, and Kivior was right there with him. So, as a result of this match, where does that place us in the table now? We talked about pride of position last week, so we know that beating Newcastle, they're not going to supersede us for second place, at least not this week. Are we? It looked to me like we were secure for the second spot that we've had for most of the season.
So the only thing that's guaranteed officially is qualification for the Champions League. We will be in the Champions League again next year, which was always the likely. We've talked about this for weeks. Has been the likely outcome. We kind of made that a little more interesting than it should have been, but we're clearly in the Champions League. We have not officially clinched second place yet. That's the real problem. So right now, what we're looking at is that we're now 4 points ahead of Newcastle, Chelsea, and Aston Villa. So we're at 71 points. The three of them are all at 66 points.
Right.
Lurking just behind them, though, at 65 points, are Manchester City and Nottingham Forest. Now, Forest also can't catch us, but City, however, can. And the City has 2 games remaining because they play the FA Cup on Saturday. They have their penultimate game was pushed to this coming week. May 20th. So they'll play Tuesday at home against Bournemouth, and then they'll play on the final day on Sunday at Fulham. Now, if City were to win both of those games and we lose to Southampton, then we would be level on points. Now, the first tiebreaker, of course, I know you're laughing. It's fair. But, and then we would be level on points. And the first tiebreaker, remember, is goal difference. Now, our goal difference currently is plus 34. Cities is plus 24. So there would have to be a 10-goal swing across those 3 games. Now, assuming we lose 1-0 to Southampton, because I don't think I think that's the only way I think losing by 1 is the only way we lose that game, because it would be a smash and grab for them.
Yeah. It's the worst case scenario there. Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, City would need to win their 2 games by a combined 10 goals. Now, could they? That's not crazy, but the way they played this year just doesn't. That would not be in key. If this was last year or the year before, yeah, they might. But this year, this City team isn't doing that. Not Bournemouth and not Fulham, both of whom are solid teams who have had decent seasons.
That's what I was going to say, especially just hearing Bournemouth, who we know is one of the teams that has beaten us this season. It seems unlikely they would run up a huge goal difference, even if they did beat them. So, yeah.
We should also add, by the way, because obviously we talked about the relegation spots all being clinched: Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton. We know that. Hold on, now I'm going to thinking about it. We know obviously that it's Burnley and Leeds are coming up next year, and then hang on, let me just make sure. They're in the playoff for the last spot. It'll be Sheffield United or Sunderland will have the last spot in the Premier League for next year. And then we should say all of the European spots have actually been clinched. So hang on. So Liverpool and Arsenal will be in the Champions League. Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa, and City are all within 1 point of each other. The top three in the table will have spots in the Champions League. The sixth place team will have the Europa League, and then the seventh place team will have the Conference League. Because remember, Crystal Palace, by winning the FA Cup, is going to the Europa League next year.
Right.
Now that might get also a little weirder if Chelsea wins the Conference League, and they could qualify for the Europa League in either way. But if they qualify for the Champions League, then the Europa League spot, I believe, just disappears. I think is how that goes at this point. So Brentford seems like they are not going to be. I think Brentford and below, minus Palace, are not going to be in Europe. I think.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that because I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll know with certainty soon. So yeah, thanks for that update.
This time next week, we'll know exactly.
Yeah. So now there's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So, we have our dessert sometimes, which sometimes it's a fun soccer related thing, kit leaks and things like that. And sometimes it's just something fun to talk about that's kind of peripheral to soccer or maybe even peripheral to sports altogether. This time our dessert is apple pie because it's American as apple pie. We're talking about a little bit of baseball stuff that I've wanted to talk to you about for a while. This is kind of following a thread that we started a few weeks back, you may recall. But so the first thing that I wanted to tell you about is yesterday there was the debut of a pitcher in our own household. My son pitched a match. This is the 9 to 10-year-old division that he's playing in. He's an 8-year-old this season. But he pitched his first game ever and had a good performance. He pitched 1 inning and he garnered 2 strikeouts. And then the one that he didn't strike out was a grounder to the pitcher, and he grabbed it and made a throw out at first base. So nice. Congratulations to him. I was very proud of him. The other thing that I've wanted to talk to you about for a while, so there's a couple things related to MLB, Major League Baseball. So for one thing, so you had told me about MLB.TV and suggested it as a fairly reasonable way to watch a lot of baseball games, specifically out of market ones, and I'll return to that momentarily. But for now, I did get an MLB.TV subscription. I have rekindled my fandom, my fanhood of the Cubs, the Chicago Cubs. That was my team as a kid growing up. I've been to Wrigley Field a handful of times. This kind of started when I rewatched the movie Rookie of the Year a few months ago, like just trying to watch every baseball movie I could with my son, just trying to get him more interested in baseball, or at least as interested in baseball as he is in soccer. Right now, soccer is ahead by a lot. I'm trying to get him to love baseball just because he has a good arm, and I'm really hoping he can go far as a pitcher. But anyway, so we rewatched Rookie of the Year, which centers around a kid who gets to play for the Cubs. And I have a tough time getting hats that fit me. And I found this one model of New Era hat that I'd gotten at Yankee Stadium actually a few years back. And I was like, this hat fits me so well. And because it's New Era, like it has a model number, and I was able to get a few other hats of that same model with different designs, or one of them actually has no design on it. But one of them was a Cubs hat. And it's just like kind of wearing the hat again. Like I feel awkward wearing a hat for a team that I'm not following closely enough to have at least a surface level conversation if it comes up with somebody. Right. So those put together, and I was like, let me sign up for the trial of MLB.TV, which I did. And I started enjoying it. I was watching the games, and, also contributing to this was, as I talked about, the Apple Sports app, which you chuckled at the name that they just called it Apple Sports. But
of course they did.
You mentioned who your favorite teams are, which it's across all of Apple's apps. So the Apple TV app, like where you watch the MLS games, the Apple News app, which is where I get all my athletic stuff from, right? Through my Apple News Plus subscription, I get the Athletic. And they know that I'm an Arsenal and a Cubs fan, and they show me articles from those teams. But in the sports app, it shows me scores on my watch. So I'm seeing every day that the Cubs are playing. And my gosh, there are a lot of baseball games. When you're used to soccer, where it's at most 2 games a week, baseball plays a lot of games.
Oh, yeah. Major League Baseball season is like 162 games. I mean, it's why baseball, I realize this is a soccer show, but one of the things I've always loved about baseball is it is in some ways the better metaphor for life, because it just happens every day.
Yeah.
And you can get baseball is a sport that's very easy to get poetic about, which has there's a lot in that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm seeing the Cubs scores just because I had it favorited. Like, I'm seeing the Cubs, like, I'm seeing their score lines, I'm seeing them playing, and all this contributed to me subscribing to MLB.tv, and I tried it out, and I've kept my subscription past the 1-week free trial. And I had occasion, we've talked before about different sports related things on the Apple Vision Pro. They've had some cool soccer things. They had like an MLS Cup behind the scenes. I think I showed that to you when we were together over the summer last year. And so they've had some cool soccer things. And then they actually recently had a behind the scenes Yankee Stadium tour, which was kind of cool, although it really focused a lot on the mid-season match that the Yankees had against the Dodgers, who they would end up playing the World Series against, but this all took place before that. It focused a lot on the New York area Dodgers fans, who I guess at least some of whom go back to the Brooklyn Dodgers days. I don't know how much of them it really is that at all, but they implied that it was.
Well, the Dodgers moved in 58, so...
Right. But, you know, sometimes that's like a familial thing. Like, you know, your parents were Dodgers fans and it gets passed down. So, but yeah, so... But what was really cool, so MLB, like, let me just say, the MLB technology, and I've always heard this, like back in the day when HBO Max was having trouble with streaming Game of Thrones, like not enough people were able to watch, it was crashing and stuff. They brought in MLB's technology to their streaming, just because MLB has always had a top-notch technology as an organization. And I see it like across all of their Apple platforms apps that I use, whether it's on my phone, my iPad, my Apple TV, and even my Apple Vision Pro. Like, they are the best apps outside of those developed by Apple itself that I've used. I mean, for gosh sakes, they have CarPlay support where, like, you know, my iPhone screen shows up on a screen in my car, and they have support for that where you tap or you click on the game on the screen and it'll offer whichever of the radio broadcasts you want for that game. Right. Which is amazing. Like, that saves me having to pay another, whatever it would be, like $5 to $10 a month to Sirius to get it if I wanted to or something. Right. And it's just so easy.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is a fantastic thing because they have and it's home or away. You can listen to all of them. It's great.
Yeah. So on top of all that, they have a really awesome Apple Vision Pro app, which has this feature, and I'm trying to look up the name right now, and I'm not seeing it, but it's like Game Day, I think is what it's called. It's called like MLB Game Day or Game View. This is the coolest idea, and it's they mark it as being a beta, and there are definitely like some timing related things that they can work on a little bit. But imagine you're watching an MLB game, and you can choose different positions where you are, either in the stands or like the default is that you're basically like where the umpire stands or crouches, like right behind the catcher. And you see a virtual representation of whatever field they're playing in, like an accurate view of, I forget, like I've seen at least one in Wrigley and one or two other places. Yeah. I think it was the Pirates Stadium that we played or something. It was the first time that I looked at it. So you're in the stadium and you're seeing from whatever vantage point you're seeing the field, and for each player, and this is where they can definitely get improved in the future, but there's like a little circle with the face of the player moving around in real time. Like, they have some kind of tracking. I don't know if it's camera based or if we've talked about like those like brassieres that the soccer players wear that give them like real-time analytics on all their stats and where their motion is on the field and stuff like that. Maybe the MLB players have something like that also allows them to be tracked in real time. But you see where they are in real time. You see the pitch come in, like a 3D model of the pitch in real time, coming in and going out. And so it's like you're where the ump is, seeing the pitch and where it's hit. Yeah. And you see the players like running the bases in real time. And this is all while there's a video display of the action by default, it's like up above the pitcher's mound or something. So you're seeing the video and it's like you're there at the same time. So it's almost like it's on a Jumbotron while you're sitting in the field. Really, really cool idea and done really well. The only frustrating thing is that sometimes it's out of sync and either the video screen that you're watching will be like either ahead or behind, which ruins the effect a little bit. Like when you see on the screen or you hear the sound of the pitch and then you see like the pitch being hit and then you see it come in or something like that. That's broken the illusion a couple times, but it's a really, really cool idea.
Oh yeah, and they've been doing that. I mean, I remember back. This would have been 20 years ago at this point, where they were having that. It was just a Flash player. Remember Flash?
Yeah.
But they had, and it's with baseball. They've done so much with the revolution in statistics and like the amount of data they're collecting on like every single pitch and that they've got is really astounding, and the degree to which they're sharing it with the audience. I mean, baseball audiences are very stat friendly in general. It's a sport it's a sport that's always been heavily driven by statistics in a way that others kind of can't. Like pretty much everything in a baseball game is quantifiable in some way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they've really, and it helps the game is particularly stop and start. Like the NFL has a similar thing where they sort of show you the ball moving on the field. I can't stand it. It's slow. It repeats itself. It's just, I don't like, it doesn't work nearly as well. Part of it's probably the sport too, but yeah, baseball is fantastic. It really is. The MLB does a great job with that.
Oh yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about that's really cool, and just to point this out to any of our more technically minded viewers or listeners who are getting this right now. But one thing that I have set up, so the biggest problem of an MLB.TV subscription is, so for me, the Cubs are an out-of-market team. They're in Chicago. I'm in New York. That's generally fine, except when the Cubs are playing the Mets, right? Or if they were to have some interleague play and play the Yankees or something like that. When they're playing some team in our market, then all of a sudden it just shows up as blacked out in the MLB app, except you can, so it's been established, and this is a major use case for VPNs, right? This is a big reason people will sign up for services. I think ExpressVPN is the big one that I've heard about a lot. They sponsor almost every podcast I listen to. They've sponsored at least once, where you pay them some amount on a regular basis per month, per year, and all of your internet traffic for whatever devices you have signed into the VPN, your traffic goes through their servers. And so you can make it look like your traffic is originating from any place where they have a setup. So they'll have their own presence in different states and different countries. So you can get around, for instance, if you wanted to have like a Sky Sports subscription, let's say to watch Arsenal or something like that, right? From what I've gathered, it sounds like we actually may have a better arrangement for watching Arsenal in the US than the in-market areas. So maybe the inverse is true. Maybe if someone in Britain wants to watch Arsenal games and they have a friend in the US, what I set up with my dad, and I've tested it out and it's been working, is a VPN setup where I don't pay a company. I'm not subscribing to ExpressVPN or any other site like that. I am using an app called Tailscale, which is something I've heard about. I'm a software engineer by trade and by hobby. That's just what I've always done. I've been very technical with that stuff. And on podcasts that I listen to talking about technology, it seems like a new, shiny, like everybody's talking about like how cool Tailscale is, just for like getting back to your own home network for doing home automation things and stuff like that. It's always been a pain. A Tailscale makes seamless and effortless, where you just install it on whatever computers and devices you want to connect to your home network. And if it's on your home computer, you can actually use that as the place where your internet goes through. So what I was able to do is install that on my computer in New York and my dad's computer in Texas. And we can we shared our connections with each other. So I can tunnel my traffic through Dallas and he can tunnel his through New York, so that to the MLB app, as long as you have location awareness turned off, like it asks you if you can use like, the actual location, like with the GPS or connecting to your iPhone to get the GPS from an Apple TV or something. As long as you turn location services off, then it has to go by where your traffic is originating. And it looks like I'm coming from Dallas. Like if I do a speed test using the speed test app, it pings the Dallas server instead of my New York area servers. So it should work in both ways because we shared symmetrically with each other. He can do the same thing when he's going to watch hockey or something like that. He can tunnel his traffic through New York to get around when the Blackhawks are playing a local team or something like that. So it's just something to be aware of as a free option. Like I said, if you're willing to install it on your computer and you're comfortable with a few steps, it's overall very approachable. And once you have it installed everywhere, including they have an Apple TV app, so I'm able to watch on the big screen like I like doing when I'm watching with other people. It's been really cool. So it's something worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. Usually, if it's because with MLB watching the Yankees when they play in Texas, either Texas team, whether they're in Texas or not, either the Houston Astros or the Texas Rangers, I have to watch on their network. Which, I mean, baseball is one of those because it's so long. I watch enough of the games through the New York one that I can survive here and there. But yeah, it's interesting to have those options.
Yeah. And it's also just funny, the way that you watch baseball is so different from soccer. Just like the ads. Oh, and that's, by the way, one cool thing. So I've been working every day on my Apple Vision Pro at work for the last couple of weeks, just due to some physical issues I've been having. I've been on the sofa with my Apple Vision Pro projecting like a huge monitor in front of my face instead of being constrained to a little laptop screen. That's made a huge difference for me, but that allows me to have other things in the world around me. So I'll have baseball just like up in a corner where there is no TV and you would not mount a TV. I can just have it up in the corner. And one thing that's really cool, I don't know exactly why this is, but the MLB app running on the Apple Vision Pro doesn't show ads. On the Apple TV, it shows ads. I believe on the iPhone, it shows ads. When it's on the Apple Vision Pro, it just says commercial in progress. And you just hear this kind of like indistinct recording of like what it might sound like at a ball field when they're like between innings or something like that. This is kind of like the audio equivalent of being blurred out, which is perfect when I'm at work. Like when the game is on, you kind of hear what's going on. You can look up if there's something interesting going on. And when there's commercials on, it is not distracting at all. It's amazing.
Yeah, baseball. I mean, baseball is good at, in some ways, good at that as background noise. But also, because I watch it through the app, and usually, like they have their own set of like they'll play old highlights. They'll have like almost like a scoreboard game. They'll do the hat hiding the ball game. They move the hats around. They'll mascot races. Like they'll do goofy things, but they'll also have they'll promote MLB Network, which is weird. Like, keep watching the channel you're watching,
well, wait, is MLB Network is different than MLB.TV?
It is different.
It's almost the same, but not quite.
There's a lot of similarities, obviously. So, but
because my son pointed the same thing out. He saw an ad for MLB Network. He's like, "Aren't we watching that?" Yeah. I was like, "Almost."
Effectively.
Yeah. So that was just something I wanted to share with everyone. I've been, in many ways, this is like the story of our show is you slowly pulling me further and further into sports, where like 5 years ago, there was zero sports in my life at all. And then I started coaching my son with soccer and baseball. And then you got me into watching Arsenal. And it's just like slow, like my life is probably more than half sports now.
Yeah. I will say this. I think your son playing is definitely sort of what drove that. But I think also I'd be very curious to see how this would have played out. Because Arsenal, I think, in our conversations, obviously, I think, you and I have a particular relationship and we approach things a certain way. Obviously, you and your son are going to have a different relationship. I hope so. But I'd be curious to see how this would have played out in the alternate universe if you had sort of come to this just through him. I suspect the Argentina, the Messi kind of thing probably would have happened because your son's going to be more into that. And we talked about sort of how he's drawn into that world. I think you sort of pulled him into Arsenal as opposed to if he had been at a free for all, you might be a Real Madrid fan. I don't know. It's possible. It's a different universe. In a different universe, you're following Real Madrid.
He's been trading soccer cards at school. This is something because like the town that we live in is very much soccer, not baseball. Like everybody in his school doesn't give a crap about baseball for the most part. It's all soccer. And he has a Thibaut Courtois card. So I was able to tell him about that. And after a baseball game, we were catching a late meal and they were showing a replay of the Classico from last week. So I was like, oh yeah, you have a card of him. He's a good keeper. We played against him. He was annoying to us. But yeah, it's been a good journey. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
So what is coming up for next week?
We've mentioned it. Sunday morning, midday, late morning. Is the final day of the Premier League season for Arsenal. They will be at Southampton. Every game will be starting at the exact same time. And our game, Arsenal, we broadcast somewhere in the broader universe of NBC-owned networks and streaming services and what have you. I hadn't seen anything announced before we came on and started recording tonight, so I don't know exactly where. They'll announce it sometime this week. And you'll see where that is. Our game will be interesting. I'm sure there'll be a lot of eyes on a lot of the games involving the European contenders to sort of see how that plays out. But that'll be on Sunday as we go to Southampton. But before that, we should not forget, it is another important day in the Arsenal universe. On Saturday, the Arsenal women look for their second Champions League title. Only English club ever to win the Women's Champions League. Look for their second Champions League title against Barcelona. That game will be on Saturday. Now, in the U.S., it's broadcast on something called DAZN or DAZN. I'm told it's also pronounced as. I don't know anything about this service other than it exists and shows the Women's Champions League. I think it was started as a boxing originally. But they do have various sports on there. But that's, as I understand it, that's where the Women's Champions League final will be. The Houston Gooners will be having a watch party, so that'll be fun for both that and for Sunday. And I'll be honest, I'm not super optimistic. Barcelona is extremely good. Chelsea women won everything this season in England, and Barcelona destroyed them in the semifinals. So probably not, but hey, you got to be in it to win it. So good luck, Lady Gooners.
Yeah, it's so congratulations to women. I hope they do well. It is kind of funny them calling it Championship Sunday. I noticed on NBC USA, wherever today's game was. You know, the championship itself having been decided a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's just what they've called it the last few years, and you know, and last year it was the case. The year before it wasn't. Right. So you're kind of taking your chances on. I mean, Liverpool will officially get the trophy next week, so I guess there's that if you're into that sort of thing.
Coronation more than
watching someone else lift the trophy. Anyway.
Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to tell a Gooner in your life about our show. I hope they would appreciate that. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
North London is red and New York is blue.